Okay. So thank you, Anand, for joining me today on my podcast. I'm really excited to speak with you. Anand, you're obviously the co-founder of ClaraLearn, an enterprise-level software which works with human training and HR and all these different aspects. But even before this, you have a lot of experience working in consulting, I understand, Deloitte, and you've also worked at Cadillac Fairview. So you have a lot of industry experience even before you started your journey as an entrepreneur. Today, I'm excited to talk to you about obviously AI, the implications of it for our society, the economy, and everyone who's watching. But also, I think a much more fascinating topic is AI and consciousness, and some of the personal work, the projects and research you have done on those topics. And I think there's a lot to learn from there. So I'm very excited to talk to you. So thank you for joining me.
It's my pleasure, Shekhar. Thank you for taking your time, and the work that you're doing is truly commendable.
Thank you. So just starting off, Anand, how did you end up in the current position you're in, working on ClaraLearn? What has your journey been like?
Yeah, I think first of all, I'm founding ClaraLearn today with my co-founder Ram. It's a career intelligence and learning platform that we are trying to build. Typically, we offer the platform to enterprises, educational institutions, government, and various different entities that essentially are come up as an ecosystem that help the professional as such, right? So professionals are at the center, and if you pick up any institutions that engage with this professional is where we want to be. And the core thesis or idea is to be able to turn human potential into economic mobility, right? And the only way we would be able to truly achieve that is position ourselves into these. And I can speak more on those as we go ahead. But coming to your question as to where did I come? Shekhar,
sorry, just I'm still here. Sorry.
No, all good.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that I'm online.
Yeah. Sorry, I just cleaned my nose, so the camera I have to turn
Got
off.
it. Yeah. So just to give a brief on how did I land into sort of founding ClaraLearn? I have always wanted to start my own venture since I don't know when, long back. So to give an idea about my overall career progression, I started off as a software engineer, and then back in India. So I'm born and brought up in India, and my first company that I worked for was Mastech, right? I started as a software engineer there, and then moved to Deloitte Consulting, where I worked around 8 years, 4 years in the US and 4 years in India, and shifting through various different roles. So over my career of around 16 years, I've tried to consciously put myself into various different positions. Like, for example, one quote, or rather a saying that goes in my head is grass is always green on the other side. So I try to live that, where if I'm in a software engineering or engineering team, then you engage with various stakeholders, right? You engage with testing team and so on, the functional team. So I used to put myself, I did work in software engineering, then I moved into a testing role, then I moved into a functional role. So the reason over a period of time, I accumulated those to actually live those teams as well, instead of sort of assuming what happens over there. And that essentially gave me a holistic picture of how does a typical business operate, right? And how do set of teams come together to build an organization and then move towards a shared value and a shared goal, right? So that has been my overall journey, and that has been conscious. Somewhere back in my head, I always wanted to start a firm and sort of drive value. So I captured various different skill sets by positioning myself into various different teams and roles as such.
Okay. So you obviously have a lot of Deloitte experience, a lot of other work experience. You mentioned over 16 years, and that you've always wanted to work in something where you're working assisting teams, I guess. And so, like to someone who hasn't worked in corporate, I
Hmm.
guess, what does your software do? Like, for example, give a problem scenario and how you would help them.
ClaraLearn? Yeah,
Yeah.
so ClaraLearn essentially depends on where we are trying to implement. But regardless, we have a framework called as Discover, Explore, and Retain, right?
Hmm.
And our core thesis is that, I mean, it's important to understand your true potential, right? Not necessarily what market wants from you, but what do you want, right? So you, as a period of time, like let's say if you just graduated, right?
Yeah.
So even if you graduated just now, you might not necessarily have a work experience per se, but you have developed certain skills through the period of your life, right? So, and there are like skills, knowledge, experience, your work preferences, all of those that you bring to the table when you get into a role, right? So what happens is like, as such, what I've seen, like leading teams as well, myself as well, many times we do not look at from that aspect. We are always in that survival mode, right? Whatever job I get, I know briefly that okay, I want to be in this space, and then eventually I move on, right? So, but then what we feel is a better approach towards life is always to ground ourselves first. And that grounding is about knowing yourself, right? So ClaraLearn tries to help you discover yourself by engaging with that platform and discovering what are your skills, what are your strengths, where do you truly want to go, what are your work preferences, and based on that, it then helps you explore. So, and how does it explore? Is we have like AI agents that actually scan the market and are able to connect what you as a individual, what are the skills, experience, and work presence you have versus what's out there in the market. So it opens up and gives you clarity on, okay, these are the 5 things or 10 things that you could get into in your career. Now, once you know that, what we do through our Explore is also help you with various different courses, saying that, okay, now you are at this position right now. This is what your strengths are. And in order to operate in this particular role, these are the 10 things that you would need to do, right? And we connect those and put down a timeline for you to be able to execute that. And then our
Mhm.
last is a retain, through which we help you retain that knowledge that you gain. So one of the core problem, at least in this world, I mean, where digital transformation and the use of digital sort of spiked up over a last decade, right, is where there's too much information to consume, right? But how much
Yeah.
of that information are truly retaining, meaning how much am I actually remembering, is a challenge. So we try to tackle that challenge as well using learning science based module. So this comes out as a package now. So now if you, let's say you are a fresher who's now trying to get a job, you could use ClaraLearn to be able to discover yourselves, explore, retain information, and then grow in your career. If you are already in workplace can have ClaraLearn where they could be able to internally mobilize the skills, right? Instead of like recruiting a new individual, what about if the position is now obsolete? If or is going to be obsolete, there could be other areas that this individual could be plugged into, right?
Mm.
So we could do that. We have like various micro assessments and learning science based modules through which many organizations or corporates have these compliance related training that they do, right? But those who have been in that space would know that usually compliance based training are just checkbox.
Yeah.
You end up, you do not necessarily measure what you're learning. All you're measuring is whether you've done it or not. So ClaraLearn focuses on that aspect and measures what you truly have done and have retained. If you get into workforce board or government or policy making, we sort of have the system through which you could actually see which industries are actually lacking certain skill sets, how you can grow those skill sets, how can you move skill sets in various different domains and so on. And there are certain features or product offerings that comes into that. Yeah, that, I'll take a pause. Let me know if I'm making sense.
Yeah. So it's I I thought it was just for big companies, but CloudLearn is also a software for individuals as well.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And so like for everyone struggling with a job, finding it, and you just graduated, they can use the software to essentially discover and sort of gain those relevant skills that would make them more attractive to a potential employer. and connect with them,
Absolutely.
essentially.
Yes.
Okay, wow. That's pretty cool application of AI. How did you come up with this idea? Was it just through your experience working in organizations, or like was there a specific moment or experience you had where you
Mhm.
thought, hey, AI would be amazing for this?
Yeah. That's a good point. So this sort of, to be honest, right? Like I said, I did want to do business, so I tried out a couple of venture ideas. Then I think 2 or 3 years back, I was too much into consciousness, Advaita Vedanta, and that specific domain knowledge that I was trying to gather, right? And through that, what I realized is like that discover part is essentially that, like, even if like, again, touching upon, let's say, Hinduism and
Yeah.
Bhagavad Gita, right? So if you look at it, what Krishna is trying to do with Arjun is essentially through chapter 1 to 17, right? What he's trying to do is like first get Arjun to know himself, right? And once Arjun knows his true potential, then things starts to sort of work in his favor and be able to get to where he wants, right?
Mhm.
So I was trying to like get that and build a mental health app, to be honest, where build a platform through which people can have actually a transformation in their life, right? And But then as I navigated through that, I felt like that's a bigger piece, and there is a bigger responsibility to it also, to be able to like achieve it in a certain way. So that concept, but still lived with me as such, right? Now, when we were like myself and Ram we started talking about like these aspects, and at that time I was just building a prototype on ClaraLearn because I was obsessed with clarity. I was trying to find like what is an impact, what does impact even mean, right? So if I as an individual wants to create an impact in the community that I live in, how can I create an impact? And as I pondered over it, what I realized is like there are 2 or 3 aspects that are very critical to creating impact. One is clarity, one is hard work, and the other is of course luck. But luck. So now, if if you look at clarity, as soon as if you try to put even a mathematical formula towards it, what you'll see is clarity becomes a compounding factor. So the more clarity you have, the more you are able to create an impact with even a less of hard work and a little bit of luck. But if clarity doesn't exist, then you end up like going in circles, right? So Clara Learn essentially is clarity as a service, clarity in learning. So Clara learns, the Clara stands for clarity. So that's where I then started to like build a prototype, and then like something wherein how can you get clarity in your learning, and how can I consume information and retain that information as well, is what I was trying to build. Then I met Ram. He was also like in that same phase where we were working in AI and systems, and then he felt the need where many people are currently anxious about what is going to happen with their role, what is going to happen with the career, and so on, right? And that's where we sort of then try to actually register a company, work on this problem in a more defined way, and create a business model out of it as well.
That's so interesting. Like how you sort of started this from the human problem of clarity, right, and understanding. And I think I don't know, there was some stat out there which said like one of the biggest use cases uh, for AI is like therapy and understanding oneself better, right? And I think it ties into your like research on consciousness as well. But like, to what degree can AI help us better understand ourselves? What is it good at, you think? What do you think it's bad at? And like there's probably biases of the system and culture and all that stuff. Like, how did you like, is that something you had to navigate as well as part of ClaraLearn? But
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
So as we went towards ClaraLearn, especially in learning, right? So the other aspect of learning is have been sort of also very much focused on how do you typically learn, right? Like
Mhm.
how do you retain the information that you consume, right? So when you sort of try to dig deeper into it, what you realize is it is so important for you to engage with any information for you to truly build that domain knowledge, right? So what I mean by that is like, so first to answer your question, like how much AI can help in getting clarity for yourself, right? And again, I'm not a what do you call mental health expert or a neuroscience professional or a logistics
Disclaimer.
okay, yeah, I'm putting a
Disclaimer.
disclaimer there. So
Yeah.
whatever information I'll say is based on my consumption of knowledge, right? But here's what I believe, like what typically happens is today, for us to able to retain any information and build a domain knowledge, we have to have something called as desirable difficulty, right? What that means is like, if we are not going through that basic struggle of understanding a certain concept, engaging with that concept is not going to go and register in our head, right? What I mean by that is like, if let's say a junior professional, when I started my career, I was in software engineering, and I used to write code, right? So unless I don't write that code hours after hours, and then I do not accumulate that knowledge for next 2 years, 3 years, or so on, I would not be able to decide whether writing it in this form is correct or in the other form is correct. How do I actually set up the architecture? I would not be able to do it effectively. So I would have to sort of outsource that intuition that comes through that experience to someone else, right? So that's one aspect of it, and that's what is happening right now. So I'm sort of trying to put down a problem statement right now with AI, where what typically is happening is, as you engage with AI, and if you do not strategically engage with AI in a certain way, then you might outsource your cognitive capabilities, called as cognitive atrophy, right? In that terms, but at the same time, you could utilize AI to your benefit, and that benefit is every individual has a limited working memory, right? What I mean by that, let's say I want to understand a very new concept today, right? But now for me to understand that concept, traditionally, if I go in a certain sense, it will, let's say, takes me like 5 days, 10 days to like actually sit with it, learn those concepts, and be able, because like most of them would be either text heavy or it would be, let's say, a video content that would be there, right? So you'll have to engage with those and spend that amount of time. But now what happens with AI is you can actually brainstorm with it, right? It can build visualizations for you, so that as soon as those visualizations comes into play in front of you, as soon as it summarizes and gets the most critical aspect in front of you, those concepts start to like, you understand it better, right? You don't have to spend as much amount of time to be able to engage with that. But the critical aspect over here is it's not to offload it to it, but make it easier for you to understand those concepts, engage with it, spend less amount of time, and get more value out of it, right? That's where AI definitely helps as such, especially in the aspect of learning.
Okay. So like the working memory part is very important, right? Like, which helps us sort of work with those, like manage all those different ideas, right? And
Yes.
then that's why, I mean, I personally, for things that like projects I'm interested in learning about, researching, and, have one doc, which has been started, months ago, and just doing more and more research on that. So another question is, like, there's been a lot of use of AI in schools, and I think now the TDSB has special programs like softwares which like can detect AI. They're seeing different. So if you're writing an essay, apparently my friend was telling me that she's a teacher, that like there's different drafts, and they can see each draft, so the student has not just copy pasted it from scratch. But there does seem to be this sort of possibly a negative effect of AI, especially when it comes to young students. Like,
100%.
how do you think that problem could be better, like, navigated, where AI, instead of being a hindrance, is like how can we better approach that problem?
Absolutely. And to be very honest, ClaraLearn is exactly at that space to be able to. So our perspective and premise is that we are not saying that do not use AI. Rather, we should be using AI, right? But what we are seeing is use it tactically and use it strategically, knows its pros and cons, its benefits, and then utilize it, right? So now coming to your answer, how can you do that? So first of all, yes, there is like research that has been come up in the last 1 or 2 years, which have actually studied these aspects, and it is called cognitive entropy, where your cognitive ability sort of diminishes as you offload your engagement to AI. So that is sort of now established as a fact. The second aspect is how can you utilize that and do it in a better way. A good example is, let's say, if you have used Google Notebook, right? What you could do over there is, and there is something as learning mode in that, right? So it doesn't give you the answer directly; it engages you with you to be able to get to that answer, right? So the more you engage with it, the more you put your thought into it, the more you are able to understand those aspects better. So you do want like something for you to like kickstart, right? So you say that, okay, build this draft for me, but you don't just use that draft and put it into your essay. What you might want to do is now break that draft. You have to spend that time reading it and then seeing where can you change it. Then you question it, like why did you say it to be in this way? Why cannot this be in the other way, right? So then as you brainstorm with it, you will be able to understand those concepts even better than you traditionally would have been, right? So that's the aspect that is a better way to be able to engage with any form of learning or any form of utilizing the AI with. Now, to give a very brief example, how do we do it in ClaraLearn, right? Let's say you are learning a video, okay, learning through a video, and then there's like a 1 hour video that you have on a specific topic, okay. Let's take example. Let's say you are trying to understand about like global supply chain, okay, and now there is a 1 hour length of video of that global supply chain topic, and then let's say as an individual you're an intermediate person who is just getting introduced to this topic, right? So technically, for you to be able to actually sit down and listen that for 1 hour long and actually remembering those aspects is very low. So traditionally what they say is like, whatever you sort of consume, there's a high possibility that you'll only retain 10% of that information based on the attention that you had in the next 1 week. And if you do not engage with it further drops down, right? So what ClaraLearn does in that is, as you go through that video, it automatically knows which sections of that video are highly complex. Now, once it knows that, it sort of ambiently puts a pop-up over there. It stops the video. As soon as you reach that point, it will stop that video and it will engage with you, asking you a certain question. And that question could be, what is the next topic that is coming up? And then slightly for you to engage with it. And as soon as you do that, as soon as you engage with that topic a bit, your potential to remember that information drastically increases. And unless, as opposed to if you are passively just listening to that, right?
Yeah.
So these are the ways by which you could actually have a better way to be able to approach learning or even productivity or getting an outcome, so that end of the day, you do not lose out on the cognitive capability that is very much important for you to build your career. It's very much important for you to operate in a certain way.
So you're essentially using it as a way to incorporate more engagement, right?
Yes.
Using AI to ask questions so that it's not just like, you're putting in chat GPT, write me an essay on Shakespeare, right? But it's asking you questions and testing your knowledge in it, which is so important. I think I did a bachelor's in psychology, and one of the most useful things is like, spaced repetition.
Absolutely.
Right? And learning. Yeah. Right. And essentially being asked questions helps a lot with retention. And it's really cool. Like, so is that the main application you see for AI in terms of education, in terms of just like asking questions, or like what other aspects do you think it could help? Yeah, application.
There are multiple applications of AI for sure. Like now, based on the field of work where you are in, right? So and from what aspect are you looking at? If you're looking at from a business aspect of it, or you're looking from an individual or employee aspect, or so on,
Yeah.
right? So now, typically, what the way AIB is being positioned, right? For that, I'll let me like take a step back and like to take a look at a very macro level at labor, right? So traditionally, what labor even means, right? And what are the fundamental aspects of labor? How the workforce typically works as of today, and traditionally has how it has worked, right? So let's say I am a freshly graduated software engineer, as an example. Now, if I am joining a new company, and that company is, let's say, if you're in Canada, is paying you, let's say, 20K or 30K a year, as an example, right? So where did that number come from? Like you'll get around $30 per hour. So you're typically given a wage which is hourly, and the reason you get that hourly wage is because through that hour you produce a value or an outcome for that amount of dollars the employer pays. You create a value out of it, right? Now, and that value that you create has a monetary value associated with it. That's why you get that $30, right? So now, overall, historically, wage has always been a factor of two aspects. One is your skill set, what skill set you bring in, and how scarce are those skill set, right? So if you have those skill set that are very scarce, that wage will be higher. And if that skill set is very you have that skill set but it is not scarce, there's so many people doing it, that wage would be further lower. Now what AI is doing as such is acquiring human skill sets. That's one. And the other, from the other angle, it also does is it reduces the scarcity, because now you could have as many AI agents running in place of an individual, right? So automatically the fundamentals of labor are going to change, right? Because you had always operated in the sense of outcome, task-based outcome, but now it's turning into value-based economy, right? So what is the value that you can provide? And it no longer is about like how many hours that you have spent as such, right? So the point I'm trying to make over here is like, with regards to AI is impacting the global workforce in that angle, and now it now forces us to think, then what is it, the value, human value, can I provide as an individual? if 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 AI is able to write the code, if AI is able to do all those works that I used to do earlier, now what is it that I can provide, right? So there are certain limitations with AI that AI cannot do currently, at least, are those about judgment, right? What is right versus wrong? Is it good to go in this direction, or is it good to go in that direction, right? Cultural aspect, emotional aspects that comes into judgment, critical thinking, to a larger extent, right? But if you look at all those aspects, the way it connects to our previous conversation now is all of these aspects that I'm talking about, which are very important and which are very human focused, they are built over a period of time. And for that, you have to engage with the content. And that's the point I'm trying to make, where if you offload even that aspect to AI, then you would have nothing left with you as an individual to provide value, right? So from that aspect, coming to now application of AI, you use the same technology for you to learn better. You use the same technology to be able to offload certain aspects that you might not want to do it because it takes too much of your time, right? So let's say writing emails, where you let's say you spend like 10 minutes just typing those content. Instead of that, now with AI, you have like various different products like Whisper Flow and so on, where you can just speak, right? And it can write it down quickly for you, right? So you use those kind of tools. You use tools to automate things instead of you taking time, where like, if let's say there are 10 different systems where you have to go in, feed information and go through it, you automate those tasks as well, right? So you definitely go about doing all those aspects, whether you are an enterprise or you are an individual. But at the same time, you use the same technology to also build your core human strengths as well that can give you value. I know it was a very
Yeah.
elaborate answer to what you mentioned, but it's loaded. We can unpack one by one if you would like.
Yeah. So like, I think one of the aspects then is you mentioned human judgment, right? Which AI can't necessarily sort of take, right? Like emotion and experiences. Um, so how does that practically help us individuals understand where our place is in society after AI takes away a lot of these jobs or changes the nature uh, of the economy?
Yeah, totally. So with regards to human judgment, so that's where it is important for you to know yourself, right? Like what is important, what is the value that you are providing, right? But there is another angle to it as well. Like now it depends on, like, as an individual, how do you see the world, how do you perceive the world, right? So for me, it, work has been something that drives pleasure for me, right? Now there could be individuals for them work doesn't drive pleasure. It's like, I mean, I just want to spend time, let's say, with family, friends, go chill, hang out, watch movies, watch Netflix, binge. Nothing wrong in that. Have each one to their own, right? But the problem over here is, like, if you, and it again ties to that philosophy of Hinduism as well, or any culture that is about giving, right? So you have to shift your perspective from first uh, seeing like what can I get to what I can give, right? So you see like, okay, what is the value that I can create in this economy, and now what are my strengths that I can utilize to create value out of it. I doubt like many people actually think from that angle. Like, let's say, and I, because the reason I'm saying I doubt, because like me, my friends did not think when I was growing up.
Yeah.
I was going through my career, like in my 20s or 22. I did not necessarily think from that aspect, but it's becoming more important to now think about like what is the value that you can create, and how can you create that value to be able to gain money, right? So you need to build that value is what we need to understand, because the way the current society is being structured, formed, how the overall socio-economic fabric operates, and the disruptions that are happening, it's very critical to get into this direction to see how can you make yourself successful. And that's something that can be done by first realizing your potential, and then seeing how can I add value into work.
So you're essentially saying like there's with AI, it's freeing up more of like the tasks or the problems we have regarding the, you know, if Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like the bottom ones, and now sort of it almost gives us the freedom to sort of pursue the higher
Totally.
goals and pursuits in life, right? Like whether
Totally.
self-mastery, and for that it requires a better understanding of the self, of your values, and of a more philosophical answer to a more philosophical question, which is what can you provide to the world, right? What is your duty or dharma?
True.
Which is so nice. So does that mean like everyone's kind of like you're almost compelled into it because of the changing market? Like, do you believe it's going to become a necessity where you you know, you can no longer just be a typewriter or something? Like you have to answer those questions for yourself to do well in the economy.
Yeah, because like, see, I mean, I'll frame it in this way, right? So now I actually read a post today that Reid Hoffman, who's, I think, he used to run LinkedIn, right? And his point was about creating aircrafts, right? So so that there's something called as boomer or something, where he invested money in now. So the premise of that topic was about like, he's saying currently in the US right now, for them to be able to produce, there's an enterprise that produces this what do you call, aircrafts, and then for them to be able to produce, historically it has been dependent on the supply chain, and the supply chain is politically driven in a way, or political in the sense congressional, wherein like for you to get those parts, it takes a certain amount of time because of the regulations and those aspects, and it is designed in that way which makes the production of that particular aircraft to be time consuming, to be capital heavy, because like you have to pay through each state, if you have to pay through various different contractors. But then the way they were approaching is like, why can't they build the whole thing themselves, right? And the point he was trying to make earlier, there were like 5 different teams working on a specific task of, let's say there was a turbine that they had to build. For that, there were like 5 different teams going on. Now that enterprise or venture, they just had like 2 people with Claude, utilizing Claude code, and they could turn it around in 2 day time, right?
Oh, wow.
And that's something that now they are saying that, oh, this is how it should be, right? Now this is like, now this is questionable, right? There are 2 aspects to look at it. From one aspect, yes, speed is great, growth is great, but now what it's at the other end, what it's doing is like, in the traditional sense, the way it operated, it also generated economy. It also generated money to all these people. Like now, all those what do you call, contractors, companies, and all of those, right, are not necessarily going to earn, right? So the question now comes is like, we as an individual, let's say I as an individual of this society, I am subject to government norms, how big enterprises, how big powers actually operate, right? So it's totally up to you. Do you want to be dependent on the whole ecosystem to drive you in a certain direction, or do you want to be independent, and regardless of how someone decides for you, you're able to? It's easy to say, right? Like, I mean, we can definitely say that, okay, you need to have a structure in place where everyone gets benefits and so on. But in the ecosystem that we live in, there would be what do you call, powerful entities that will go in a certain direction, and it will eventually lead into that tiff between job loss and reduction in what do you call, manforce and everything, right? So when that happens, how do you create your own survival mechanism, right?
Yeah.
So that's the point I'm trying to make, where that's why it is very important for us to like think about it as to how do you approach this, like, and the only way you could actually do that is by creating value for yourself and truly gathering knowledge that will actually create value. And then, of course, it is important to keep working with various different entities, enterprises, raising your voice to say when it shifts too much into that aspect where the power accumulates in one small piece, right? And that's where government comes into play. So they do make sure that and that it doesn't happen.
Yeah. No, I think your story sort of also reminds me of this. This is one story by Warren Buffett where he said, if you went 10,000 years ago and you were a more productive farmer, right? You would grow nominally more wheat or corn than your neighbor, right? But now, if you're more productive in today's society, if you're a trader using algorithms and stuff, you could be earning like 100 times more than the average teacher, right? And so with the use of technology, sort of the economic returns and consequently the political power, like the delta between those at the top and that sort of increases so much, right? So are you saying essentially like at some point the government sort of steps in to like manage that difference, and like and how would they even do it? Like,
yeah, so that's what they're doing,
taxation, right? Or regulation, or what?
Absolutely. So that's what government is also doing, right? Many governments across the globe are trying to slow down what's happening, the progression with it. So it's important to balance the speed, because like the biggest challenge, like the technological disruption, I mean, it's not that it's something new. It has happened in the past, right? But the difference between the AI era and the past is that the speed at which the change is happening and the speed at which we as humans are able to catch up is a huge gap, right? So today, like, I mean, I'm working in this AI space like day in, day out, but it is difficult for me to catch up itself. Like every single day, there's something that new comes up and disrupts as such, right? So it's literally very difficult to catch up the speed at which it's going, right? And because like it's impacting the knowledge work, right? So and knowledge work takes time. For me to build a certain skill, it takes time. Unless I do not invest that amount of time to acquire that skill, I won't get that. So that's the problem that government also across the globe is trying to do, right? They do want to be competitive across. At the same time, they do want that there is a fair what do you call game that happens, right? So it's about like many enterprises would be looking at it from a zero-sum game or a game versus many would be looking at it from a positive-sum game if you look at game theory, right? So the idea is of how can you create a positive-sum game? And for that, there needs to be balance, and these power houses actually work with various different entities to balance that. I mean, does it happen very easily? Probably not. It takes a lot of influence, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of power and struggle to be able to do that, but that will keep happening. So, I mean, I sitting over here would have no control or very less control over it, right? But the control that I have is making myself, what do you call, skilled to add value.
Okay, that's a lot. I think it just gets into so much into politics too, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's how we're gonna organize our society.
Correct.
With the disruption, and as you said, like there's something different to AI than previous technological disruptions, right?
Very true.
Because even you working in the space, there's a lot for you to learn as well. I think I now want to move on to like consciousness and AI. And I know we have like 15 minutes left. But even if you don't cover anything, maybe at another time. But like, it's so fascinating, right? Because you started off in your AI journey or trying to learn about consciousness and all these aspects. Like, what should we know, right? Like, how does AI work with consciousness, or how is consciousness different from AI?
Yeah. So I think first I'll explain like my perspective about consciousness and what is human consciousness, right? So and secondly, there are like around 350 different versions or theories about consciousness, right? And we are still as a society debating which one is true and which is not, right? But then what we as a society know that there is something called as consciousness, and there is something called as self, a concept of self, and the experience that we have. There's something sitting in us, if you want to call it in a very crude way, in a very simple form, that can experience, right? So the question is like, the way we experience life or we experience the world, does AI also experience the same way, right? So that will always be questionable based on which view one holds. If you're in a materialistic view, or if you come from a world which believe that consciousness is an intrinsic phenomena, meaning like or is it an emergent phenomena? So meaning emergent, meaning like one theory is that like as these systems get more complex, consciousness comes out of it, right? It evolves through it, and now the systems become conscious. Versus intrinsic, meaning consciousness just exists, right? It is not something where the as these forms get complex, it arrives. So it depends on like which school of thought you fall into. Second aspect is like, I think it's too early to even talk or relate consciousness with AI, because like it's not at all in that space, is what my opinion would be. Because AI is like intelligence, right? Like, and there are layers to intelligence. Just to give just one small example, right? And I'll need like 2 minutes of your awareness, because I'll ask you a very simple riddle, a question. It's not even a riddle, a small question, and then you give me an answer. Let's say I and Ram met at Starbucks at 9 a.m. Okay, you met Ram at Tim Hortons at 10 a.m. Okay, where was Ram at 10 a.m.?
Ram was
You know,
at Tim Hortons. If I
yeah,
met him
right.
at Tim Hortons, yeah.
Correct. So now for you to come with an answer, did you do any calculations or did you do any computation? No, right? You just
No,
knew the answer, right?
yeah,
Now you put the same question to an AI, and if you go like few models behind, like let's say 1 or 2 years back, it struggled to give that answer, like this kind of
really,
answers. Yeah, because what the large language models are, they are predictive mechanisms. They like they take up the word and they predict the next word and so on, right? So there's no intelligence baked into it. Now these agents have that intelligence where it will compute. It will now first like get that information, then it will sort of plan and then see, okay, what needs to be done and so on. So these are like compute heavy, right? So these intelligence operate in a very different way than we as humans typically operate, right? So I mean, I'm not even bringing consciousness aspect over here. I'm just talking about basic from an intelligent perspective. How does it operate? Now, again, I just want to be cautious that I'm not at all dumbing down AI at all, right? All I'm trying to say is like there are various different flavors to intelligence, and there is various different layers to what intelligence means, right? There is one thing about being productive and producing an outcome, and there's another thing about these aspects of intelligence, right? So it is evolving, is what I'm trying to say. Like the AI systems are evolving in a certain way, and the focus, most of the focus of the industry and the foundation labs are from a productivity standpoint, and it boils down to that labor aspect. How can you make a business more optimal and more viable and generate more economy with less amount of work, right? So that's the part they are totally focused on, right? So, but like human consciousness is totally different. Like I'm not even talking about the intelligence. So consciousness is about you experiencing yourself, right?
yeah,
We have certain purpose that we have. We have certain core values. AI doesn't have. It has like certain goals. Like so, I as an individual, there's something that drives me to be able to do something about it. Like build a society, build network, talk to people. Like you're talking to me. It's
yeah,
not, and in general, we are curious in nature to be able to like drive that communication. The way AI would approach is AI is more goal oriented. It has a goal, it has a task that it needs to be done, and it will go behind that task, right? So that's the difference that I feel. So I mean, I sort of put down the point about consciousness with regards to AI because I feel that my opinion is that because I am more towards intrinsic phenomena of consciousness. I do not believe in the materialistic phenomena that consciousness comes through complex organisms. So that's why I don't think the narrative of AI consciousness is just to build that narrative so that there is like some what do you call eyes on that AI space. People just keep looking at it and so on, right? But
yeah.
I feel it's not there yet, or it won't be.
Yeah, I feel like I also have like similar views. I think same from like studying from Hinduism, right? And I remember when I was a kid, I watched the Swami Sarvapriya and the
Yeah,
lectures at IIT he gave
I love his
on like all
lectures.
these
Yeah.
concepts. I'm like, wow, that's so cool. And that changed my view where AI, we can't deduce consciousness from intelligence, right?
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
if you are, this is me now, when I'm 8, hopefully knock on wood, 80 years old and I'm not as
Mhm.
mentally sharp, does that mean
Mhm.
I'm less conscious? Or when I was a kid, I was less intelligent, does that mean I was less conscious? Or when you're sleeping, are you less conscious, right? And I think, I don't know what your views on consciousness are, but for me, I see it as awareness,
Mhm.
right? Like, and the fact that like there's no way to prove it except for I know I'm aware and if
Absolutely.
you're aware,
Yeah,
right?
totally. So one good, I mean, you made a really good point, right? So one good way is like, I mean, when the chat GPT and all came in, right? So I used to like engage with chat GPT. There was a voice mode. So I used to ask like, is fish conscious? What's the difference between a consciousness of let's say a fish, a human, and an AI, right? So when you think from that term, like And if you look, given you mentioned about Swami Sarvapyananda, he's like inclined towards Advaita Vedanta, right? And
Yeah.
so the framework that Advaita Vedanta has to look at consciousness is like, um, we have something called as Manas, Chitta, Buddhi, Ahankara, and
Yeah.
there's Antakarna that builds your Chitta, Buddhi, Manas, Ahankara, right? Now, what happens from the awareness perspective is like when you sit still, there is an awareness that is required for you to focus your attention into something, and that's where most of like the manas, the buddhi and all operate in. So which is different than your conscious self, right?
Mhm.
So the concept of atman in Advaita Vedanta is all about that, like where atman is nothing but something which is like has nothing to do with buddhi, ahankara, manas or chitta. Those operate at your what do you call level of your brain, if you have to call it, right? But it's different than you confusing it, atman with those entities itself, right? So but then like now, if you do not believe in that those concepts, like about if you don't look at from that frame of mind with regards to AI, then those things do not hold at all, right? So that's why it's important, like when you talk about consciousness, it's also which frame of reference, which school of thought you are applying it will matter.
Yeah. And I'm curious, like, I don't know if you've studied like other philosophies too. Like, I know in Buddhism, they believe in this idea of like the non-self, right?
Hmm, hmm,
And I know like for centuries, like Advaitans and Buddhist people, they sort of like had these like debates regarding whether the self exists or not.
hmm.
Like, do you have any views on
Yeah,
that?
absolutely.
Or
My view is I'm still, so I have been if I remember, I mean, of course, this might not be factually like from a time perspective not correct. Like somewhere on my in a fourth standard, fifth standard, I don't know when. There was this a conversation that I was having with the teacher or something like, oh, there is God. Like when you look up at the sky, God made these stars. Then my question is like, okay, then who made God? Right. So you get into that loop of understanding that question, right? So,
yeah,
and I have been trying to get that answer for a long while until I was introduced to Advaita Vedanta. And the concept of Brahman, right, like puts end to it is what I feel. And like the difference between Advaita Vedanta and like Dvaita and Advaita Vedanta is Advaita Vedanta says that nothing exists, like space and time do not exist. What exists is Brahman, right? Versus in Dvaita, it is like uh, there is nothing called as Brahman. There is like um, there is Atman, like you, and it doesn't go beyond that aspect, right? But in with regards to Advaita Vedanta, it is Brahman is the central entity, and it creates that Nirguna Brahman and Saguna Brahman, right?
yeah,
So my views are more towards that Brahman aspect. I still feel that that sort of answers a lot of question about, and it puts a full stop. I don't know if I want to believe that,
yeah.
or I'm more inclined towards that answer.
No, so okay. Then I think my one question is, I feel like, um, the question of Maya, right? That's
Mm,
been one, I think, biggest critiques of, I feel like, Advaita Vedanta. Like,
mm,
how does that emerge if it's only
mm,
Brahman? Like, why is it here? Like,
mm.
do you have a satisfactory answer that like you believe satisfies
Yeah,
your intellectual curiosity?
yeah, absolutely. So I feel, mm, I mean, what is Maya, right? Maya, end of the day, is it an entity? Like there is something called as Maya that is creating. No, Maya is end of the day we in Hindi we say Maya Jal, right? What is it like?
Yeah.
You are creating an illusion for yourself. Illusion also, I don't know if it's the right word, but let's say whatever we are talking about right now is Maya, right?
Hmm.
You have a thought. Your framework has a ability to create a thought. You create a thought and you get stuck in that loop. So that essentially is Maya, and Brahman is essentially letting it create Maya, where it's thinking, and that the what do you call, the act of thinking itself creates Maya, right? It creates an illusion. So that's why, and then we get into that. So for example, just to, I know we just have 2 minutes, but and I can spend more time if you would want to. But
Yeah, I'm good. As long
the
as you don't have
yeah,
any, let me
I'm
know when
glad
you have
to
to
do.
leave.
Yeah. So the way I look at it is like, we have a journey, right? Let's say you are born, let's say 2000, and
Mhm.
then let's say a human being lives for 90 years, right? Let's say, as an example. Through that 90 years, what typically happens is every moment of your life, you are just creating Maya for yourself. What I mean by that is like, freedom is something that exists with each one of us, right? So now your action that you take creates a set of bondages for you, and then you live in that bondage and you keep living in that bondage, and then that time ends, you stop breathing, you're done, right?
Mhm.
But when you were born, that bondage like did not exist, like, and that's where those concepts of like karma and all comes in, right? And the concept of karma is like, basically, now that bondage could be something because where you were born in a certain society, in a household, and so on, based on which, regardless of you being able to get out of it or not, you don't have much control and you have to put in so much of effort to get out of it. So just to give an example, let's say if someone was born in a very affluent, rich family,
Mhm.
and someone has doesn't like tomorrow, even if they don't work at all, right? They don't do anything, they can still do a living. Okay, versus someone who for them to be able to even get a bit of food on the table, they have to slog, so they don't have as much amount of time to be able to think about all of these aspects, right? So they both go in a totally different direction, let's say. But let's say someone is very affluent and also gets to ponder over these concepts and so on, and then realizes that, you know what, like, nothing matters as such. Like, for me, it's important to just have peace, and then I stick with that, and they do not accumulate the bondages through which they suffer, right? So Maya is that part that we build for ourselves, right?
Mm.
And karma plays a role in that, to how long that Maya stays, right? So, like, so I think uh, these concepts about Advaita Vedanta and all these, right, are for you to first realize what all of these are, and then be able to change yourself to get out of it. What I'm trying to mean is like, I don't know, I mean, I'll just pose this question to you. Like, I used to get confused between happiness and peace.
Yeah.
Like, but there is a difference between happiness and peace, right?
Mhm.
Happiness is also a part of suffering, like, is also suffering. So let's say I like Chinese noodles.
That's such an interesting
uh,
take, but yeah.
Noodles, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So, and that gives me happiness, that gives me pleasure. But what's happening is, let's say, the act of me liking it and me getting happiness is makes me crave for it for the next time, and it impacts my health, as well as it impacts my because just because I like that, I like, okay, I need to earn a certain amount of dollars to be able to expend on that, and because of that I am associated with that. So you automatically created a bondage for you, you automatically created a Maya for you, for yourself, right? But let's say you are able to derive peace where it doesn't matter, like, yes, if someone offers you those, you will get that happiness, but you are not inclined to that happiness, you are at peace.
yeah,
So that journey of an individual is to get towards that peace, is what I feel. Like, consciousness is all about that. Like, being conscious is knowing that peace exists and it's there for everyone. But the problem over here is like, the more the time you take for you to be able to sort of shape a personality, shape a form of thinking, and like, given you're a psychology student, you would know that we operate on autopilot, right?
mhm,
Whether I like it or not, I end up doing those things. Everyone knows you should not be angry, but once in a while you get angry, right? So that's the part about like, how are you able to get your brain out of autopilot? How do you unlearn things? How are you able to not get controlled by your own mental faculties? Is a journey, and that comes after you know all of these concepts, and then it's a journey to like, now the chitta vritti, I feel, is nothing but that. right? Where
Yeah.
you are now consciously taking an effort to be able to sort of let those things go. And eventually you reach that spot where now you are at peace. It doesn't necessarily matter. And you are just like now trying to do good to the society. And end of the day, whatever outcomes you get, you live with it, and you work through that.
Yeah. Um, the it's such an interesting point you made about like happiness and like how it's related to suffering. I think um, there's this like interesting point where like we have two, I think, different pathways of happiness. One's obviously the dopaminergic pathway, right? Which is you get this dopamine rush when you're chasing something, right? Which is I think we most associate with happiness. But there's also like the serotonin one, right? Or like the oxytocin and all that, which you sort of get when you're like satiated, right? Like when satiated, and it's less chasing. And I think it's just being like, I don't know if that's equivalent to peace. Maybe like an expert can speak to it. But yeah, like, do you think you can still have like happiness or a version of happiness or peace in life that does not involve chasing?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like most of the like, I mean, you could see some people who are like successful, who like, for example, let's say, I don't know if you're a fan of Mahendra Singh Dhoni or not, or
Yeah,
Sachin
cricket.
Tendulkar,
Yeah.
or various other folks, right? Like, and if you look at people who speak about it, and then you'll see a common thread that you'll see in them, and they'll be like, okay, you focus on the process and not the necessarily outcome of it, right?
The karma yoga,
So
I guess.
so they essentially have developed that state of mind where they are now able to, they like that piece for sure. I mean, does Sachin or Mahendra Singh Dhoni like crowd cheering? Absolutely, they would be loving it. But at the same time, if they do not cheer, will they be like dejected and feel that sorrow, that, oh, and they keep doing for that? Probably not. And that's what I feel. And that's something that we can. Every individual has that capacity to build and build a life where like you enjoy that, what comes to that happiness, but you're not restricted to it. So but it takes effort to be able to build that space of mind where you operate in that way.
That's interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of like happiness and I do want to shift over to like the just some like just to end it off with some rapid fire questions, and maybe you could just give me like you know, short answers to each of them under 30 seconds. Okay, Claude or Chat GPT?
Claude.
Why?
I mean, I don't know, I'm not too what do you call, inclined towards how the business operate at OpenAI. That could be one. But in general, I have found, and from a functionality perspective also, I've found to be inclined more towards Claude, at least at this point. I mean, and keeps changing.
Do you think AI will be a net positive or for the average person, or no?
It will be.
Okay. What is the biggest opportunity that will be created by AI for the average person?
I feel those who want to actually sort of succeed in life, who have drive, right? It just like multiplies their ability to do it. So if you are able to learn that, then you would be able to actually capitalize on that and do good for yourself.
Okay. What is the biggest misconception regarding AI?
Biggest misconception is ChatGPT is AI. AI is like a very big umbrella term, and ChatGPT is like it's an LLM based model, but AI is beyond that. There are very different levels of layers in AI.
Can AI ever be conscious?
I don't think so.
Okay. And I think that is okay. Do you have a final message just for the average, you know, especially if you're young or a new student? I mean, a newly graduated student. What would your message be to them?
My message would be like, I mean, just believe in yourself, and the period that you have right now, like from 20s to 30s, is to fail, right? I'm almost 40 and I'm extending that period and giving me that ability to fail. But what you get from failure is something that you'll hold on to your life. So don't like be dejected with failure. Don't be what you call shying away from it. Just put your 100%, let it fail, and through that the learnings that you'll get is the self that you build. That's one. Second, do save your money, like whatever, just be conscious about saving. So have a certain aspect that you save and let it compound over time, so that because the world that we are now living is like there's no concept of job security anymore. My dad spent like 40 years working in one company. Now the average time period someone spends in one organization is just a year, right? And you keep seeing layoffs and all. It's not, I mean, it's not going to get like any better. That you'll see those layoffs happening and everything, right? So the best way to be operating in that society is to be able to like secure yourself so that you can do what you want to do. So if I were me, like in my 20s, I would say that, okay, save this money and then do what you love doing.
All right. Thank you so much, Anand, for joining us today. And, we wish you the best with your future endeavors and with ClaraLearn.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I love the conversation. Again, I can speak all day on these, Shekhar. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.